Have you ever wondered how one person can live thousands of miles away from their homeland, yet their name still remains at the center of political and social discussions for decades? It's a strange thing, isn't it? Some people disappear from history the moment they lose power. Their names slowly fade away and new faces replace them. But some names refuse to disappear. They continue to create debates, discussions, and questions long after they leave the stage. And that brings us to a fascinating question. Why is Reza Pahlavi still talked about by so many people around the world? What makes his name continue to appear whenever people discuss the future of Iran? In this video, we are not here to support or attack anyone. We are not here to repeat slogans. We are here to explore the story, the ideas, the controversies, and the questions surrounding one of the most discussed Iranian figures of our time. To understand this story, we need to go back to a time before social media, before online debates, before millions of people around the world shared their opinions with just a click. A time when Reza Pahlavi was born into a family that was already one of the most recognized political families in modern Iranian history.
But then everything changed. The Iranian Revolution happened. In a very short period of time, an entire political system collapsed. A monarchy that had ruled Iran for decades came to an end. The country entered a completely new era, and the Pahlavi family left Iran. For many people, that was the end of the story. But for Reza Pahlavi, it became the beginning of a completely different journey. Imagine growing up knowing that millions of people have strong opinions about your family name. Some admire you, some criticize you, some reject everything connected to you. Every statement you make is analyzed. Every interview becomes a topic of discussion. Every decision is watched closely. That is the reality of being someone whose identity is connected to a major historical event.
Supporters believe Iran needs a recognized figure who can help unite different groups and provide a vision for the future. They argue that his international recognition, political experience, and historical background could become advantages. But critics see the situation differently. They argue that a famous... Now let's imagine something for a moment. Imagine waking up tomorrow and seeing a completely different political situation in Iran. A moment when a new opportunity appears. A moment when the future starts taking a different direction. In that situation, who would have the ability to influence what happens next? This is one of the biggest questions people continue to debate. Some believe that anyone who wants to play an important role in Iran's future must have a deep connection with the people inside the country. They believe a leader should understand the everyday struggles, challenges, and realities that ordinary people experience. But others see the situation differently. They argue that in today's world, influence is no longer limited to physical presence. Technology, social media, and global communication have changed the way political figures connect with people. Someone can be thousands of miles away and still have an impact on public discussions. And this is exactly why the conversation around Reza Pahlavi continues. But there is something interesting that is often overlooked. When people talk about the future, many are searching for one person who can solve everything.
The people, the economy, the culture, the international situation, and the decisions made during critical moments. So perhaps instead of asking whether one person can change everything, we should ask a different question. Can that person become part of a larger movement that creates change? This is where the story becomes more interesting. Because when many supporters talk about Reza Pahlavi, they are not only talking about him as an individual, they are also talking about what they believe he represents. A vision of the future, a symbol of hope, or for some, a connection to a different chapter of Iran's history. But critics challenge this idea. They argue that the past is often remembered differently by different people. Some focus on the achievements and modernization of that period. Others focus on the problems and criticisms surrounding that era. And this is why the discussion remains so divided. Because history is rarely just one story. It depends on who is telling it. And perhaps the most important question is this: why are younger generations, many of whom never experienced the Pahlavi era, still curious about Reza Pahlavi today? The answer may not be only about politics. It may also be about
The biggest mistake may be believing that the destiny of a nation is already written, because history has shown many times that everything can change in a single moment. One decision, one crisis, one unexpected opportunity. And these are the moments when political figures become important. Not only Reza Pahlavi, but anyone who hopes to play a role in shaping the future. Because leadership is not only about having a famous name. It is about gaining trust, creating a realistic vision, and convincing people that a different future is possible. And perhaps this is the biggest challenge for any political figure. Not just being recognized, but proving that they can turn ideas into reality. Because in the end, the future of a country is not written by one person. It is shaped by millions of choices. And maybe that is what makes politics so unpredictable. No one truly knows what the next chapter will look like.
But the story is not over yet, because behind all these debates there is a much bigger question hiding in the background. A question that many people think about but rarely say out loud. If history turns in a new direction one day, who will be ready to become part of that next chapter? History has always been shaped by unexpected moments. Sometimes a single event can change the path of a country for decades. Sometimes a decision made in a small room can affect the lives of millions of people. And sometimes a name that seemed to belong to the past suddenly returns to the center of attention. The story of Reza Pahlavi is interesting for many people because it is not only about the past. It is also about a question that concerns the future. When we talk about a political figure, we are not only talking about the person themselves. We are also talking about an image, an expectation, and sometimes even a dream that people.
Not simply as someone connected to the past, but as someone who talks about the future. He has repeatedly spoken about issues such as democracy,
individual rights and political change. But in politics, saying something is one thing. Turning those words into reality is something completely different. This is where every political figure faces their greatest challenge. A challenge that cannot be solved only by popularity, media attention, or a famous family name. It requires trust, organization, a clear vision, and the ability to bring together people with different opinions. Imagine a moment when a country enters a new historical chapter. In that moment, people do not only look at the past, they ask a much simpler question. What happens next? What comes after change? Who takes responsibility? How can a country with millions of different opinions move forward? How can groups that have been divided for years find common ground? These are the questions that anyone hoping to play a major role in Iran's future must eventually face. And perhaps this is the hardest part. Because criticizing is easy, opposing is easy, but building. And maybe this is why some names remain alive for generations, because they become connected to a much bigger question. What will happen next? This is a question millions of Iranians, both inside and outside the country, continue to think about. For some, the answer may come through political change. For others, through a new generation of leaders. And for others, through figures from the past who return to the center of attention. But history has one strange rule. Never announce the end of a story too early. Because sometimes, just when everyone believes a chapter has ended, a new chapter begins. Maybe years from now, people will look back at this period and say, that was the beginning of a major transformation. Or maybe they will say, that was simply another chapter in Iran's long political journey. No one knows the final answer. But one thing is certain. The story of Iran's future has not been written yet, and every page can change with a decision, an event, or a choice. So the final question is this. If history enters a new direction tomorrow, who will be able to earn the trust of the people? Who will be able not only to talk about change, but to create it?